Welcome to episode 69 of Uncovering the Corners of the World podcast. I'm your host, Karina Kasmala. Using research and my personal experiences where I actually set foot in some of these places, I'll be describing some of the unknown attractions in both the US and around the world. From Montana, we travel south to Utah, the 45th state in the United States. That's also nicknamed the Beehive State. Utah is a landlocked state that borders Idaho, Nevada, Arizona, Wyoming, Colorado, and touches a corner of New Mexico. It's also a state that has 17 islands. We start off this week on the largest island on the Great Salt Lake, Antelope Island. Antelope Island measures 15 miles long and 5 miles wide. It is accessible by causeway, which is a raised road running across low or wet ground. The island is home to several animals, such as bison, pronghorn, bighorn sheep, badgers, and coyotes, among other animals. Although the island looks relatively remote, it was inhabited by Western Shoshone, Goshute, and Ute people at one point. Yet it wasn't until 1845 that the first Euro-Americans, John C. Fremont and Kit Carson, explored the lake and named the island Antelope Island after the pronghorn antelope that they killed. Today, you might find the Fielding Gar Ranch on the island. Built by a man named Fielding Gar, the small log cabin ranch was the first permanent structure on the island. Fielding Gar was instructed by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, LDS Church, to build a ranch to manage the church's tithing herds. Gar built other buildings, such as a blacksmith shop, a bunkhouse, a cellar, and more. The ranch was still in operation until 1981. The lake surrounding Antelope Island is the Great Salt Lake. Around 10,000 to 30,000 years ago, the lake once covered 20,000 square miles of land and was known as Lake Bonneville. The Great Salt Lake is about 14 feet deep, and it's considered to be between 3.5 and 8 times saltier than the ocean. Swimming in its dark waters, you might spot brine shrimp, an aquatic crustacean with a transparent body that measures just over 1 centimeter. It's the only real confirmed animal to live in the Great Salt Lake, unlike the other creatures that some people claim to see. In June 1877, a group of men who worked at the Barnes and Company salt works claimed that they saw a creature with the body of a crocodile and the head of a horse. The creature bellowed out a scary noise as it charged towards them. The men ran towards the hills and hid from the creature. When they returned the next day, they only saw large rocks overturned. Another man, known as Brother Bainbridge, claimed that he saw a monster with the body of a dolphin swimming in the lake by Antelope Island in the 1840s. Whereas Native Americans told stories of mermaids who emitted the sounds of crying babies and lured people into the water, only to then catch them and pull them into the depths of the lake. Our next attraction takes us to 6200 North, 22300 West in Promontory, Utah, to the Golden Spike National Historic Park, where we celebrate the completion of the first transcontinental railroad, where the Central Pacific Railroad and the first Union Pacific Railroad were joined. Thousands of American workers and immigrants, such as Chinese, Irish, Mormons, and others, worked on the railroad. The Transcontinental Railroad was an ambitious and the most expensive project ever taken by the federal government. The railroad was finally completed on May 10, 1869. When the Transcontinental Railroad was finally completed in 1869, 4 special spikes were presented at the Golden Spike ceremony. The Golden Spike measured 5 5/8 inches long, weighed 14.03 ounces, and was made out of 17.6 karat gold. On one side of the spike, the phrase, "The Pacific Railroad ground broke in January 8, 1863 and completed May 8, 1869, was engraved. Another side had the phrase, "May God continue the unity of our country as this railroad unites the two great oceans of the world," presented David Hughes, San Francisco. The other two sides had the names of the railroad officers and directors. The top was engraved with the phrase, "The Last Spike." One paved road leads to the Golden Spike National Historic Park. At the park, visitors can take a ride on either of the two auto tours, the West Grade and the East Grade Auto Tour. The West Grade Auto Tour takes you on a track that holds the Central Pacific Railroad world record for the most track laid in a single day, 10 miles and 56 feet. Whereas the East Grade Auto Tour takes visitors on the Union Pacific Grade. During the ride, visitors can see the natural geological wonders such as the Final Cut and the Chinese Arch, a natural limestone arch named as a nod to the numerous Chinese laborers of the Central Pacific Railroad. Besides auto tours, you can see the two locomotives, Jupiter and number 119, that traveled on the completed railroad track. Both locomotives were built in 1868. Our last attraction for this week is located at Circleville in Utah, where we find the home of an infamous Wild West outlaw. Born in 1866 in Beaver, Utah, Robert Leroy Parker, or better known as Butch Cassidy, was the oldest of 13 children in a Mormon family. The gunslinger adopted the nickname Butch after working as a butcher in Wyoming, whereas for the name Cassidy, he took after working on the Jim Marshall Ranch with a man named Mike Cassidy who taught him cattle raiding, or stealing farm animals. Butch Cassidy's first offense was stealing a pair of jeans from a closed store and leaving a note saying he promises to pay for the pants next time. His life of crime escalated to more serious offenses, such as stealing horses and cattle, and then moving towards robbing banks and trains. In 1894, he stole a horse and was sent to 2 years in Wyoming State Penitentiary. After being released from prison, he rejoined and led the Wild Bunch, a band of other lawless men who robbed stagecoaches, small banks, and trains. In Circleville, Utah, you can see the childhood home of Butch Cassidy, a small, one-room wooden cabin. Behind a plexiglass window, you can peek inside the cabin and see a bed, chairs, a few dishes, and a table inside. On the property, there is also a barn and farm equipment. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. If you're curious about Antelope Island, check out the website utahstories.com and the University of Utah website on Antelope Island. To learn more about the Great Salt Lakes, visit the website learn.genetics.utah.edu. If you're interested in reading more about the Golden Spike National Historic Park, visit the National Park Service website on the Golden Spike National Historic Park. Lastly, if you're interested in learning more about Butch Cassidy, check out Britannica's page on Butch Cassidy. If you want to learn more about Butch Cassidy's childhood home, visit the website paiyutetrails.com. Have a great week.